March 19th, 194,550 miles off the coast of Kyushu, Japan. The dawn light was thin, filtered through drifting sea mist and the acrid haze of war. Aboard the USS Franklin, CV-13, known to her crew as Big Ben, the air hums with routine. Planes are lined wing to wing across the flight deck, ordnance crews loading bombs and rockets for the next strike on Japan's home islands. At 0700 hours, breakfast trays clatter in the galley. Below decks, machinists sweat over roaring turbines. Above, signalmen scan the horizon, relaxed, too relaxed. The Franklin had pushed closer to Japan than any other American carrier. No fighter screen above, no destroyer picket far enough out. Command believed air opposition was thin. Then, a faint whine in the distance, a single dot in the sky, coming from the sun's glare. "Plane, starboard side!" The cry cuts through the stillness. The crew barely has seconds. The incoming aircraft, a Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber, drops through the clouds in a near-vertical plunge. Its pilot, Lieutenant Commander Ichiseki, releases two 500-pound bombs before his aircraft vanishes in smoke and shrapnel. Both bombs strike home. The first tears through the flight deck, detonating among fueled and armed aircraft. The second plunges deep into the hangar bay, igniting aviation fuel, rockets, and napalm tanks. Within seconds, the Franklin is a firestorm. The shock wave rips through compartments. Men are thrown across steel bulkheads. Bombs cook off in roaring succession, shredding aircraft, crew, and deck alike. "Fire! Fire on the hangar deck!" shouts echo through choking smoke. Black columns rise thousands of feet into the air, visible even from Japan's coast. Below deck, sailors crawl through darkness, dragging wounded comrades through twisted metal. Others die instantly, crushed or burned alive. In less than 10 minutes, over 700 men are dead or dying. The Franklinless, powerless, her decks glowing orange from the inferno. Every instinct says abandon ship, but one man refuses. Captain Leslie E. Garris stands on the bridge, smoke curling through shattered glass, his voice raw but unwavering. "We will not abandon ship, not while she floats." Outside, ammunition continues to explode every few seconds. Another eruption. Planes tumble like burning leaves into the sea. And yet, through the smoke and chaos, men fight back. Flames rip through the USS Franklin's decks like living creatures, twisting and roaring with each new detonation. Inside the hangar bay, a hellscape unfolds. Rows of Grumman F-6F Hellcats and Curtiss SB-2C Helldivers turn into molten skeletons as fuel lines burst, flooding compartments with burning aviation gas. The carrier's heart, its flight deck, is no longer flat steel. It's a cauldron of wreckage and fire. And yet, amid the destruction, sailors begin to move. Some crawl, some stagger, many blinded by smoke and heat, but they move. Below decks, Lieutenant Commander Joseph T. O'Callaghan, a Jesuit priest serving as the ship's chaplain, stumbles through corridors slick with fuel and blood. He carries no weapon, only a small cross and a fire extinguisher. He shouts to the wounded, to the terrified, "Keep moving, lads, you're still alive, fight for her." O'Callaghan organizes fire teams, drags hoses, and tends to the dying, a priest-turned-firefighter, surrounded by flames hotter than any hell he could have preached about. On the hangar deck, Chief Petty Officer Donald Gary crawls through smoke-choked darkness, searching for survivors trapped below. He finds hundreds of men alive, gasping in the dark. He pushes through the maze of twisted bulkheads, memorizing a route to freedom. Then he turns back, again and again, each time leading another group of sailors to safety. Above, the Franklin's forward elevator shaft has become a chimney of fire. Explosions send shockwaves up through the hull, throwing men off their feet. A 500-pound bomb cooks off under the deck, blasting a hole the size of a small house through the carrier's midsection. Still, the crew refuses to quit. Damage control teams, many barely trained, charge into infernos, armed with hoses that spit steam instead of water. They smother flames with foam, shove burning bombs overboard with poles, and vent magazines to prevent detonation. In the engine room, machinists work blind through smoke to keep the turbines from exploding. They know that if steam pressure drops too fast, the boilers will rupture and that'll be the end. Hours pass. The Franklin still burns, but she does not sink. Her list stabilizes at 13 degrees. Power flickers back for moments at a time. The ocean around her is littered with oil, debris, and bodies, hundreds of them. By noon, rescue destroyers USS Santa Fe and USS Hickox draw alongside the blazing hulk. The Santa Fe's captain, Harold Fitz, risks collision to bring his ship close enough to take wounded men aboard. Flames leap between the two hulls as sailors form human chains, carrying the injured across swaying planks. When Captain Garris finally transfers his wounded and reassembles his remaining crew, he issues a single command over the intercom, his voice hoarse but resolute. "Gentlemen, we are staying afloat, and we're going home." It sounds impossible. But by dusk, the fires begin to die down. The ship's skeleton glows red-hot, her decks blacken beyond recognition. Yet beneath the scorched armor, her engines still breathe. Somewhere in the smoke and ruin, a radio man taps out a message, a heartbeat of Morse code that travels across the Pacific. USS Franklin damaged, but afloat. In Tokyo, intelligence officers intercept the transmission. They stare in disbelief. By every law of physics and war, the carrier should have been gone another smoking grave in the sea. But the Franklin refuses to die. March 20th, 1945, the morning after. The sun rises over a gray Pacific Sea. The smoke that once marked the USS Franklin's funeral now hangs like a mourning shroud. Charred aircraft still smolder on the flight deck. The stench of burned steel and fuel clings to every surface. Out of nearly 3,400 men, over 800 are dead, and hundreds more lie wounded or missing. It's the single greatest loss of life on any American carrier that survived the war. Yet somehow, she still floats. Tugboats and escort destroyers circle the crippled carrier like silent sentinels. The USS Santa Fe, her decks scorched from the daring rescue the day be. Below decks, survivors continue the grim work. Corpsmen tag bodies for burial at sea. Fire teams mop up pools of oil that could reignite at any moment. The mess deck becomes a makeshift hospital, stretchers lined shoulder to shoulder. Captain Leslie E. Garris stands on what remains of his bridge, his face streaked with soot. He gazes at the horizon, refusing to leave his post. His officers beg him to abandon ship, but Garris only mutters, "She brought them to battle. She'll bring them home." For 2 days, the Franklin drifts, power flickering in and out. Engineers crawl through wrecked machinery to reroute electrical lines by hand. Against all odds, they get one of the engines running. The wounded carrier begins to move, slowly, incredibly, under her own power. Her speed barely reaches 5 knots, but it's enough to steer east, away from Japan's coast, away from the death that seems certain. The Japanese High Command receives reports that the Franklin, struck and burning, has vanished from radar. They celebrate her presumed destruction, another victory in the defense of the homeland. But days later, when reconnaissance flights search the sea for wreckage, they spot something impossible. A lone carrier scorched, smoking, yet moving, cutting through the waves like a ghost. Japanese officers refuse to believe the intelligence. One commander, reading the report aloud, reportedly mutters, "Impossible. No ship could survive that." The Americans begin to call her the ship that wouldn't die. On March 24th, 5 days after the bombing, the Franklin limps into Ulithi Atoll, escorted by destroyers flying their battle flags at half-mast. Sailors aboard nearby ships line the rails in silence as the blackened carrier glides into the lagoon. Some weep openly. Others salute. The Franklin's crew, those still standing, are ghosts themselves, hollow-eyed, bandaged, unshaven. But they are alive. Among them, Father O'Callahan still walks the decks, blessing the dead and the living alike. For his courage, he will later receive the Medal of Honor, the first Navy chaplain ever to do so. Chief Gary, too, will be decorated, his heroism saving hundreds from the inferno. The USS Franklin would never return to combat. Her scars were too deep, her losses too heavy. But her voyage home stands as one of the greatest testaments to human endurance and naval engineering in history. She had been bombed, burned, and nearly broken in half, and yet she sailed back under her own power. Even in Tokyo's war rooms, where disbelief met silence, one admiral is said to have whispered, "If America can build ships that survive this, the war is already lost." And so the Franklin, battered, haunted, Immortal became a legend of the Pacific. The ship that refused to sink, the crew that refused to surrender. The day even the enemy was stunned by courage.